All right, Voldemort. It's been I don't know, like 3 weeks now since we've done something because sports sort of came to a bit of a standstill after the NFL draft. Uh,
Yeah.
but during these last couple weeks, I didn't really watch it because I'm not too much of a Chicago Bulls fan. But the Michael Jordan documentary has been airing, and it is now official. It was not the flu; it was food poisoning because Michael Jordan was dumb enough to take pizza from like five laughing guys that show up at his hotel room at like midnight, and everyone else is like, "Don't eat it," and he's like, "I'll be fine." I mean,
Yeah. It must have been from your pizza place, right?
uh, probably not. I don't think I own a pizza place. Um, so Michael Jordan, no flu, just food poisoning. So I guess that makes it even better. I don't know.
Yeah. That it. I mean, it's probably because it wasn't New York pizza. Because if it wasn't made with New York water, it's not proper pizza.
Don't tell that to the people in Chicago.
Oh yeah. But we were saying about there were being no sports, and as of this past Sunday, that was no longer the case.
Yes,
Sports are back. Well,
sort of.
two with sports, not any of the big four yet, but
Yeah, UFC had their thing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. But more importantly, we had got the PGA Tour and NASCAR both returning on the 17th. The
yes.
PGA had a tailor-made driving relief charity match at the Seminole Golf Club, in which Rory McIlroy came out on top, and it proved something that a lot of people, especially the ones in states that have more restrictive lockdowns, have been saying for a long time, which is you can play golf while social distancing.
Yeah, that
If
was the one.
anything, it's
I didn't
if anything,
understand that.
it's yeah. If anything, it's a sport that's best uh, equipped to do that because when you think about it, the only real two changes they really did. One, you couldn't sink a putt. It was basically a chip against the pin, and then you took it out. And then the other thing is no crowd. So basically it's like how everyone else plays golf because when was the last time you went out to the country club and you had a group of 1,000 people following you watching you play golf?
Yeah, this is what I don't quite always understand with golf. When lockdown was starting to like really bunker down and whatnot, they said, "Oh, you can walk the golf courses, but you weren't allowed to play." I'm like, but that's what you do when you play golf. You hit the ball, and then you spend most of the rest of the day walking.
Yeah.
I just didn't quite get that. Um, and then with the crowd, I mean, there's no lack of crowd, but like, there's no one really cheering in golf. That's frowned upon. All it is
Yeah.
clapping. You could just add that in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, what a beautiful putt! Clap, clap, clap. The other thing that was really taken away is that all four of the players who were in there, McIlroy, Matthew Wolf, Ricky Fowler, and Dustin Johnson. It was noted that all of them wore shorts, which is something that is not allowed normally during the PGA Tour.
Yeah,
They
I
only
never
just
understood
changed.
that.
Yeah, no, they changed the rule a few years ago that they could wear shirts. They always wear shirts. That they wear shorts during practice rounds, and since they've done that, the majority of players do so. So
Yeah,
maybe this is something that the post lockdown they can make a permanent change because it's really uncomfortable playing golf in long pants. I've done it a few times. It's not fun,
yeah.
especially during
I
80
don't see
degree
why you
weather.
can't just wear some cargo shorts. So, like, what are you gonna do? Like, hide extra balls in there, and then like, oh, I can't find it. Oh, here it is. Like, come on, like,
Yeah,
there's a million cameras around. Relax. Don't be
yeah.
uptight,
This
jerks.
isn't the trick. This isn't the trick play in baseball.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, and then the other sport that came back was NASCAR, and I find it fitting that in the very first lap of NASCAR, and their grand return, and with the
No.
eyes of the nation on them, there was a crash on lap one.
Yes, number 47, I think Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I'm not sure. It was number
I believe so.
47. I was watching the race and I was like waiting. It said 3:30 was going to start. I put it on at like 3:20. I was like getting ready for the flag to drop so I could put it on Snapchat. And I'm like waiting and coverage and coverage and coverage. and they're all they kept saying is like this is one of the harder tracks. It's a little dusty. The cars are like sort of drifting to the top of the track by the wall, so they're a little concerned about that and how to tighten and loosen the cars using physics I don't understand because I'm not smart enough for that right now. Um, but I was like, all right, I'm getting ready for this, and then sure enough, on the second turn, 47 spun out, and it just the chaos would sort of like keep ensuing throughout the day. One of the things, like I said, as soon as I turned it on for the coverage, they said the cars were going to drift up into the side of that wall, and they got to be careful with that. And what happens? Cars banged against the wall, and apparently, because they probably figure it's easier than painting the walls for advertisement, they decided to use adhesive vinyl, which I know all about because I use that every day at work. And basically, some of that stuff kept getting stuck on the driver's bumpers and grills. Denny Hamlin had a funny moment. He was one of the first guys to really get it, and he was sticking his hand out the window trying to wave everyone ahead of him, so that way he can get behind someone and use the draft and whatnot to get rid of the garbage. And all of a sudden you see it fly back, but then it goes onto the car behind him.
Yeah, it's like, well, yeah, you're fine now, but now the other cars have to deal with
so
it.
they all sort of like kept piggybacking that. It was exciting for me because the driver I like, Kevin Harvick, was leading the race for most of it. And how they they didn't do qualifying, and usually when they don't do qualifying due to like rainouts and whatnot, they go by owner points, which I guess you get points for all the cars the owner owns, and then whoever's there. I don't know. NASCAR's got weird point systems. They keep changing. It's too hard to keep track. But they sort of had that, and then they like sort of grouped it between positions 1 and 12, 13 to 24, 25 to 36, and then 37 to 40. So it was like sort of weighted, and then it was sort of randomly drawn. But Kevin Harvick got lucky. He started like about fifth, but he got the number one pit road position right by the start finish line there for pit road. And he was able to eke out a lot of the guys most of the time and get that number one spot. And what's sort of important is how they're going to be doing the second race come Wednesday. And that's basically what's going to happen is drivers 1 through 20 are going to get to start first, but it's going to be inverted. So the guy who finished 20th on Sunday's race will start at the front row. And Kevin Harvick, who won, he's going to start now in the middle. But then the guys who finished 21st to 40th are going to be inverted as well. But I believe for pit road, the way I'm reading this, is that it goes by who had won as the race results from Sunday. So I'm guessing Kevin Harvick, by that logic, is then going to get that number one pit spot again that he used to his advantage oh so well Sunday. And a lot of the guys, like I said, it was one of the harder tracks for him to come back, especially after not racing for a while. They did some simulated ones, which got one guy fired.
But you can't simulate a race.
No,
simulated anything is not the same.
No, it's not the same. And what you saw was because these guys know it's the hardest one, or one of the hardest ones, coming back, and how position is going to be done for that following race on Wednesday. The last 25 laps, there wasn't like any cautions throughout like the entire race. There were like a couple, but it was only like maybe one, maybe two cars, and it was like, oh, it hit the wall or he blew a tire. There was nothing that was like a big accident where you saw like 6 cars flip over. And get to the last 25 laps, and they're like, all right, the way this normally works out for Darlington, you're going to have that, and you should probably have a caution here. My dad and I are watching the race, and we're like both like waiting for a big wreck to happen, for someone to make a move for a spot. And then we realized they announced that how they were going to start for the second race, and we're like, oh, everyone's going to keep their position because no one's going to want to mess anything up. And so you had once it got to like 10 laps to go, Harvick went from like a half-second lead to like almost a 2.5-second lead, which is enormous in NASCAR. So it was a slow race. It was a careful race. Kevin Harvick won, so that's all that matters.
but it was a race, and
Yes.
that's. I know you said that your guy won is all that matters, but
It's not.
it's really the fact that they were playing in or racing in general. And I've said this for a while. You know this, Joe. That I said whoever would be the first sports back would win because they'd have all the eyes on the nation on them. And we saw that on Sunday with the PGA and NASCAR.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't even stay in the United States. Like I read an interesting piece about Jared Hoying, who is in his third year playing in the Korean Baseball League. Now, would I have ever read this or would this even have been written if the virus had not happened and we had a normal sports season? No, we'd be talking about how the Astros are getting pummeled by all of Major League Baseball, how the Rangers just miss out or just squeak into the playoffs.
Yep.
We'd be talking about normal sports stuff.
Yeah.
And transitioning from that, I'd like to talk about the big three sports that are working their way back. Obviously, NFL is a long ways away from being really of importance, and we'll get to MLB last because that's combined the most information that we have and the most contentious information.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess starting with the NBA, the NBA is the one they've recently been getting more concrete ideas on what a post virus resumption of play would be. And we've had a few things thrown around. One of the early things is that they would possibly have the playoffs quarantined locations such as the Wide World of Sports complex in Disney World and Las Vegas. And kind of similar to what MLB had been proposing for having 2 or 3 sites where they would play all the games until they could move back. Unfortunately for Adam Silver, the NBA Players Association executive director Michelle Roberts likened that to incarceration. So I doubt they're going to get a sign off on that. And other things that are of note, that they're saying that the salary cap for 2021 season could fall as much as $30 million with the lost revenue from both not having games and with fans, and also not being able to fulfill the prior contractual obligations to regional and national networks for a full 70-game slate plus playoffs. And in light of this, they might rip up the entire collective bargaining agreement and have to redo it just to be able to properly function. Now that is the league's look at it. The players will undoubtedly have to have their say, as all players should have.
Mm-hmm.
But the ideas that seem to be going around, it sounds like that they will go straight to the playoffs when it's possible. But how that's going to happen is a question that the obvious risk, and this is a risk for every sport, is what happens when someone tests positive.
Mm-hmm.
We have in the Korean Baseball League, if any player or coach tests positive, the entire league shuts down for I believe 2 weeks, to make sure it doesn't spread to the rest, and then they resume. Adam Silver says that if a positive test would quote shut us down, we probably shouldn't go down this path. So the idea from him is that if a player tests positive, the player will be quarantined, but the rest of the team, which is a bit of a change from their stance back in March, when after the NBA single-handedly shut down the entirety of sports thanks to that debacle with Rudy Gobert, that they would not resume for at least 14 days after the last positive player test. So it'll remain to be seen what happens. That they're still negotiating. No concrete plan is out, but basketball, I'd say, is probably the hardest of the the three sports that are suspended right now to come back, just because there's so much contact with both the ball and other
Yeah,
players that
yeah, and it's not like football where you could theoretically just wear gloves and whatnot.
no,
Sure, you're tackling each other in football, but basketball, it's you're passing that ball around, you're sweating all over everything.
yeah,
But I really, I've said this in the past. Basketball, it is competitive. Don't get me wrong, but once you get past like the top six teams in each conference, it's really not competitive. If basketball is going to come back at this point now, they need to just go straight to the playoffs and not worry about the other teams because it's not worth it competitive wise. But we talked about money wise. Yes, the
yeah,
players would want that.
yeah. And also, I thought about this just now, but for both fans and players, do you really want your first couple of games back as playing and after a long shutdown to be do or die games? Do you really want that to be the first games back? Because obviously there are going to be some players that are going to be rather rusty for the first week
Yeah,
for
yeah,
any
that's
sport.
definitely something you want
And
to
that, yeah,
think
this is
about
something
too.
that not only NBA has to think about, but also NHL, which I know you wanted to touch upon.
Yeah, yeah. Hockey is, like I've said, probably one of the hardest sports to play. Um, the goaltenders, some of the best reflexes you'll ever see. Even a bad goaltender is probably one of the better athletes you'll ever see. Um, and right now, sort of what one of the thoughts is there are four divisions in the NHL: the Atlantic, the Metropolitan, the Central, and the Pacific. And basically, what this is coming down to right now is what their thoughts are is you take the top six teams in each of the divisions and you sort of throw them into a weird playoff sort of format. But the only problem, maybe not the only problem, but one of the major problems right now is the Metropolitan Division. You have the Capitals, Flyers, Penguins, Hurricanes, Blue Jackets, Islanders, Rangers, and Devils. Devils don't really matter at this point. They've got 68 points. They're well far behind everybody else. But the Capitals through the New York Rangers, uh, they're separated by what is it here? 11 points. Capitals have 90 points. The Rangers have 79. The Capitals have 41 wins. The Rangers have 37 wins. That's 4 win difference in the win column. Capitals have more overtime losses, so they're bumped up a little bit that way. But the Rangers, with their 37 wins, is four more than the Columbus Blue Jackets with their 33, who only have 81 points to the Rangers' 79. That's a big problem with the overtime losses right there. That's bumping the Rangers out, and they would miss because they want to have the top six teams in each division go to the playoffs, and the Rangers are sitting at that number 7 seed with the 16 most points in the NHL, and they're not going to make the top 24. So that's wrong off the bat. They have the 13th most, tied for the 13th most wins in the NHL. Uh, they've played a couple more games than some of the other teams, but that's besides the point at that. And being only 4 wins away with 12 games to go from that top spot, for them to jump all the way to first place and jump 6 teams, probably not going to happen because all those teams would have to tank. That's not going to happen. Uh,
Right.
they're not all going to both pull Boston Red Sox. But it's frustrating. It's disappointing. But I guess on the bright side is that the Rangers, I believe, would get a higher pick in the draft, um,
Yeah.
which would be good. Um, but there were talks how it would sort of still be a little bit unfair because while the Rangers, who have 79 points, would miss the playoffs, the Anaheim Ducks only have 67 points. That's a 12-point difference, and they would make the playoffs. Uh, and yet, the Ducks, I believe, would still get a better pick than the Rangers. Um, and that's just not right. That's not fair. The NHL needs to. I don't know. They have to fix this because this Metropolitan division is way too stacked, way too good, and it's just causing lots of trouble. I was talking with my uncle the other day, and we both agreed hockey really needs to go to a 3 points for a win, or not give you a point for losing in overtime, because it causes a lot of problems here, and this is just crazy with how tight this division is. Baseball was like that years ago. You only had the top team in each division go. How many World Series?
Or the top team plus one.
Yeah. So how many World Series do you think the Red Sox would have won if they could have made it when the Yankees blocked them every year?
Or any other team for that matter. But speaking of baseball, and oh boy, we know a lot about what's going on, and a lot of it is good, a lot of it's bad.
Some of it's ugly.
So let's just get into it. So, as we alluded to, baseball does have a proposal in hand to resume play, but with spring training occurring in the middle of June and a start around July 1st, July 4th at the latest. The owners have already agreed to it, and they've signed off on it. But it's the players that now have to agree to it, and there's a lot of division among the players about stuff. So we'll get on the stuff that it isn't as controversial, or at least to the players first. To deal with the fact that travel is weird right now, the existing schedule has been entirely scrapped. Originally, there were talks about what they could play the regular season through October, and then have neutral site playoffs in November, but owing to concerns over a potential second wave of the virus,
which might actually put the NFL out of business.
Yeah, but that'll be a topic for another day. But owing to that, it sounds like they would end around normal time, around the end of September, first weekend in October, which means that they would only play an 80-game schedule, 80, 82, I forget the exact amount, which is down from the 100 that 1980 was, which was, in that strike shortened season, the shortest play that ever occurred during a regular major league season. The other big thing is that each division will be combined AL and NL. Universal DH will be in place for both the NL and the AL, just to keep things simple. And with the exception of the Pirates and the Braves switching for some weird reason, these temporary 10-team divisions will be the only teams that everyone plays. So the Yankees, for example, would only play the other 4 teams in the AL East and all 5 teams in the NL East.
That's so dumb.
No. But if you're a Dodgers fan, you're happy because now you can play the Astros, which you weren't going to play this year. Yeah. And I know the Astros have some beef with... the Dodgers have some beef with the Astros.
Yeah, no.
But that's another thing.
That's not what it should be. It's completely ridiculous.
But if that's what's going to be how baseball gets back, that seems to be something that's not as controversial. What is controversial, however, is that the owners are asking the players to make another sacrifice. So the backstory in this is that shortly after the shutdown in March, the players' union and the league met, and they agreed to a small lump sum, well, relatively small, at
big
the
for
beginning. Us. Yeah, big for us. $170 million is nothing to sneeze at. But a small lump sum of $170 million to be paid out to the major league players initially, and then the remainder of the salaries would be prorated based on how many games are left. So do the math. 82 games is about half of what the regular season is. So say a $10 million salary is now $5 million. Pre-tax, of course, because the government will take 20% of that, or however much. the owners now want a further 50% cut. So that 10 million is down to 5 million, now down to 2.5 million.
And then after taxes, you're down to like 1.5 million.
Yeah. Now, there there are two ways on this, and this is what has a lot of people torn. One, if this goes through, Prince Fielder, who's still getting paid by the Rangers to be medically retired, would be the highest paid player in MLB right now. Two, on a more serious note, you while that is maybe looking from the outside in, we could go, oh, that they can live on 75% less salary, but think about it, and by no means take this as me defending the players on this. I'm just looking at it objectively.
Mm-hmm.
If you were told that and agreed to that we need to make a 50% cut, and then you turned around and said, oh, by the way, after you agreed on that, the other side turns around and says, oh, by the way, we need to cut you 50% again. Yeah. Do you really want to be told that you're going to be now making 75% less than what you were expected to make?
No, I understand what the players are going through. Well, I can imagine what they're going through, because obviously I'm not being paid $30 million a year to play baseball. But definitely getting your salary cut in half, right? Things need to happen, but then get cut in half again. Your Blake Snell and some of those other guys, yeah, they do have a right to be upset and not want to lose all that money. But as one of our favorite flexible first basemen has put it, Mark Teixeira, as a recently retired baseball player, so it's not like he's like an old timer giving his 2 cents. Like, he's still within the realm of knowing these players. He basically said, you can either not play and lose an entire year to pad your stats, maybe win a championship, prove yourself if you had a down year last year coming back from a major injury, and you can miss all of that and not make any money, or you can come back and make pennies on the dollar, but you'll be making money and you'll be playing a whole nother year. And
yeah,
it makes sense, but I understand that these players aren't happy about that. But
yeah, especially because a lot of the players take offense at who is saying that. Mark Teixeira, as we know, all-star first baseman, Gold Gloves, should have gotten more.
Yeah.
And very likely a Hall of Famer when all is said and done. Not first ballot, but I could see him being on a mid-late ballot pick. But he also had a $180 million contract with the Yankees, plus money he made before with the Rangers, the Braves, and Angels.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically that's basically the 1% of baseball telling the Daniel Hudsons, the Tanner Roarks.
Yeah, not everybody's making $20 million a year. Some of these guys are making that league minimum, where they're only making, like, say, $1 million, or even less if they're like unsigned rookies, and they're not really doing. Now they're only making like $100,000, if that. And you
to say nothing about the minor league players who will make $0 because minor league baseball is not coming back this year.
No.
And then to go on to Snell's point, which he said rather eloquently on his Twitch channel. Spoilers, it wasn't eloquently. He said, quote, like, I'm sorry you guys think differently, but the risk is way the hell higher and the amount of money I'm making is way lower. Why would I think about that? And to his point,
yes,
there's still a lot of stuff we don't know about the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the things we do know is that, one, it's people who are at risk for medical, like those potentially with diabetes or heart conditions and stuff, or at a greater risk from it. And two, there have been reports of at least I believe the study was like maybe 10% or 5%. I forget the exact number, but some people did show uh, noticeably deficient lung efficiency after the virus.
Hmm.
Now, think about it from a sports standard. Just taking from baseball because that's the example people are talking about right now. There are players who have survived cancer and had to have chemotherapy. The most recent of which has been Carlos Carrasco and Trey Mancini.
Hmm.
You have players who are diabetic, have heart conditions, asthma. You
Sickle
have
cell.
players, yeah. You have families who have conditions and stuff that could put them at risk. This is not to say that uh, they should be held in the same regard as hospital workers, grocery employees, other essential workers. Which, by the way, thank you all for your service, and I'm sorry that we're not able to pay you more during these times of crisis
Yep.
because you definitely deserve it.
Yes.
But when you're being told to play out during these circumstances when things are at risk and you're being told, by the way, you're not going to make as much as you were intending to, some people are going to say it's not worth it. And that brings up one question which I intentionally did not mention in the MLB report. At no point do they clarify what happens when a player does not play because they are self quarantining or saying it's not worth it. What's going to happen to those players? Are they going to be suspended without pay? Or are they going to take up a roster slot? What happens to those people?
Yeah, because I mean,
And that is not
at that
that
point,
has not been addressed.
yeah, because at that point, I mean, with the virus scaring everybody, Blake Snell could just be like, "Oh, I have the virus."
Yeah,
Uh, no one's gonna like knock on his house and be like, "All right, pee in this cup. All right, let me see if you actually have it."
yeah.
Which, at this point, with social distancing, go ahead, take all the steroids and PEDs you want. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
well, I don't mean like if someone says they have a
no,
virus, but take an example. Sean Doolittle has been vocal that his wife has would be an at-risk person. What if Sean Doolittle says, I can't play because I don't want to put my wife at risk? Does he get paid? Does he get released? What happened?
well, at that
What
point, she
happens
should
to...
be staying at home, and he's locked in somewhere in Arizona with his teammates, not socializing with anyone else. So she should theoretically be fine.
Yeah,
That's
but it...
just if you want to play it that way. That's my stance on that. Is
Yeah,
if you're gonna restart things up, you have to, and you can't be socializing. Be like, oh, yo, you want to grab some of the guys and go down to the local Louisiana nightclub and get some good soul food. No, you can't do that. You got to be
well,
locked up and just go to and from the games. Obviously, you don't want to be like playing like you're prisoners, and it's like, all right, time to play the prison football game against the guards. Let's go. But if you're gonna come back, you need to have these rules established to make the safety happen. And while it stresses out some of these players, and as Snell said, it's not worth the risk. I understand that. For pizza delivery, I basically said the same thing. I wasn't really making much money over the last few months, so once everything sort of hit, I sort of stopped delivering because it was just it wasn't worth the risk with the amount of money I was making.
yeah,
But in that case, I think there's plenty of guys in baseball uh, who make enough that will play, even though they're making less pay. And I
yeah,
think that's what it comes down to. Uh, and I'm sure with endorsements,
yeah.
you'll be fine
However,
too.
you gotta have it has to be one way or another, and
Yeah.
it's going to be whatever the union decides. And you already had players who were upset over how the union handled the 2016 collective bargaining agreement, and you have players who are upset over how they handled the Astro sign stealing scandal. So with another labor agreement coming up in 2021,
Who knows?
combine all those three together. If there are enough players who are unhappy with what they go with this direction, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a sort of revolt, force a leadership change in the players' union.
Yeah. One of the
But
things with all the proposed plans, you have different players sort of giving their 2 cents, and probably one of the bigger names in baseball, Bryce Harper. He sort of had his own sort of like little mini plan, which would include, I believe it was 135 games. Uh, you'd be off every other Monday, but every Sunday you would play a double header, but it would be 7 inning games. And 135 games, I'm down for that. Off every other Monday, down for that. Double headers on Sunday, down for that. 7 innings each game on Sunday. No, this isn't JV high school baseball. Play a full 9 innings. Expand the rosters, which actually he said I think it was to 30 players.
30 players in a 6-man rotation.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, that's similar
fair.
to what MLB's proposing.
Yeah.
And MLB also kicked around the Sunday doubleheader 7-inning idea as well.
What I think it should be is you should be able to have dress 30 guys, but you should be able to have 40 guys on your usable roster, except you have to have a designated like 5 or 6 spots, whatever it is, to like starting pitching or whatever it is, where you have to like keep those players. You can't be like, all right, well, Garrett Cole just pitched yesterday, so he's not going to be on today's roster. Let's bring someone else up. But you can't do that. He's got to still stay on that roster. You can't fudge things around. But then what really got me to not like Bryce Harper's proposal was he wanted to have, I think it was a 16-team round robin college like World Series playoff format, and that's just garbage.
No.
That's absolutely wrong. He's lost all his rights to talk. Like that's not how you do professional baseball. There's no round robin. It's not how that should be.
Yeah.
Baseball.
You also have the problem that it's still just the 10 teams, which in the new MLB proposal that they would push for a 14 team playoff format, so 2 extra teams per league, just to make up for some of the lost games, and also to test out the format and see if it would work for 2022. Because the spoilers, no matter what happens this season, this is only for this season. The collective bargaining agreement prior comes back in 2021.
Yeah.
So
I'm down for expanding it to 14. That I'm fine with, but you can't have a round robin version of it.
No.
Or what they're doing with the NFL, where you have only one team on a bye week and everyone else has to play. Everyone's just got to play it once, do your thing.
Honestly, my 18 proposal, even with still in 3 leagues, would be better than this.
Yeah, it's crazy. And what bothers me, just to backtrack a bunch, when we had talked about it would just be you'd play your division, and then you'd play the opposing conference division.
Yeah, so AL East
that's
and
complete.
NL East
That's complete trash. What you need to do is get rid of interleague play to begin with, because that's just I don't care about that. I don't. It doesn't help me. Doesn't do anything. DH in every league. I don't care at this point, because it should just be implemented anyway. Keep the pitchers safer. But you play too many games in your division anyway. Yes, it's important to win your division, because it's your division. You need to have your division winner and whatnot. But at the same time, there's no need to be playing that many games in interdivisional play. You should be able to go to each city once, play 2-3 games, whatever it is, and then the rest are, I guess, at your ballpark. and do it that way, because I think that's a lot better, a lot easier.
Well, remember this combined regional divisions is a mother of necessity at the moment, considering that the MLB wants to try to limit travel as much as possible
Well, I mean,
right now.
I understand the limiting travel and whatnot, um, but at this point, if everything's going to be opened up and they're going to be doing them at their individual stadiums, that's a little bit different. But if we're still sort of leaning on the fence of just doing a couple different stadiums in like Arizona or something like that,
Yeah,
um,
well, yeah. The proposal right now is to have everyone in their home ballpark. So
yeah, I mean, I don't
so
know.
that it's complicated.
It's complicated. Um, it's not the safest. I, but then again, I guess if you're all playing in Arizona and Texas and you're playing at the same like 10 fields, I guess it's just as risky because everyone's still there together, but then you really have to be locking everything down and making sure everyone's just going to and from the
Yeah,
stadium.
the problem is until there's a vaccine,
Yeah.
until the lockdowns are over, there is no
Yeah.
perfect
There
solution.
is no perfect scenario.
But the starkness of not playing at all, especially when you have other sports like the the NASCAR and the PGA, the KBO,
UFC,
and UFC,
WWE.
WE, and more importantly, if and when the NBA, NHL, and the Nippon Baseball League in Japan get back going, you don't want to be the one sport that says, "Oh, I'm not playing because we can't agree on something."
Yeah, you're
That
gonna look stupid. You're gonna look dumb,
and
and it's
it's
gonna be
ultimately
disgraceful.
yeah. And I guess because we've been going on, this will be the last thought.
Yeah.
We've been going way long. The last thought. MLB, as much as all the players and the staff from that time have changed over, more or less,
Mm-hmm.
MLB still remembers what happened in 1994, how the fan reaction was against it, and how that damaged franchises, at least one to the point where it was completely destroyed and had to move.
Mm-hmm.
But that they don't want a repeat of '94.
Yeah, no, we don't want that.
They don't want to. They don't want to threaten almost 30 years of labor peace during a virus over money.
Yeah.
Push it to next year. Maybe agree to pay the full salary, but only 50% now, and then the remaining 50% over the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Back when everything should be normal and money will be rolling in.
Now, does this affect Bobby Bonilla Day at all, or does he still get his money
Nope.
like Prince
He
Fielder?
still gets paid.
um,
Same thing with. That's why I said Prince Fielder
Fielder,
would be the highest paid player because he's still getting paid by the Tigers and the Rangers.
and just one last thing to throw to the NFL. I don't know if you're familiar with the Art Rooney rule, but
Vaguely remind me about.
so
it?
basically how that works is if an NFL team needs to hire like a head coach or a CEO, executive general manager type person, even if they already know, like Patriots have Bill Belichick as their head coach, but I mean he very well could live forever, who knows. But when he decides to stop being the head coach for the Patriots, it looks like Josh McDaniels is going to probably take over. Because
Right.
it looked like he was going to go to another team a couple of years ago, and then the last second he said, no, never mind, because I think he wants Bill Belichick's job. Patriots probably already know that's who they want, but the Art Rooney rule says you have to interview a minority person for the job, and
Yeah.
even though you already know who you want, you still have to do it. It's sort of like a slap in the face. But what they want to do now is if you hire a minority person as your head coach or as the general manager, if they're there by, I think, after the second year in the third round, if you hired a head coach and he's there now for 2 years, you get to move up 6 spots in the third round.
That's stupid.
If you hire if you hire the general manager, then you get to move up 10 spots, and if you did both, you move up 16. That's
You want-
racist. That's insulting, and it's dumb. I don't know what they're trying to do.
So what you're saying, and I told this to you, what happens when everyone fires everyone, hires all minority coaches, and everyone moves up 16 slots only to realize that everyone else also moved up 16 slots, and nothing happens.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's adding too much complexity to an issue, and I know it's kind of a general problem because right now MLB has a problem with minority managers. That Dusty Baker is the only and I believe Dave Roberts too. But Dusty Baker and Dave Roberts are the only two African American managers in MLB at the moment, which is more or less an all-time low since the integration period.
And I'm not saying that there's not a problem. I mean, obviously you want to have diversity, but
you want diversity, but you don't want to force diversity.
You can't force being progressive. That's why I sort of have a little bit of a problem with feminism. I'm more of an equalist, not a shove it in my face kind of person. So
right. Yeah, the problem is when you force something onto someone, people will notice that it's being forced on them, and while some people will be happy, others will say that you did not put the best person in that position, and that's right. If you're doing something not based on is this the person that is best qualified, and instead doing this because I can get something out of it, you're damaging the franchise.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, you're just doing that.
Yeah.
Why are there only two managers in Major League Baseball that are African American? One reason is because there aren't that many players anymore that are in MLB that are African American. I believe the number is 8%, which is an all-time low since the majors started integrating. So it's an indictment, but also a reflection on what the state on MLB is.
There's so many South American players nowadays, and in hockey, there's a lot of guys from Russia and Sweden and whatnot. That's going to be a lot of trouble once they agree to get some of these sports back, is that these guys have to then quarantine for 2 weeks once everything's a go. So that pushes a lot of things back.
And I was also going to say, that doesn't mean there isn't diversity. Taking the MLB example again, you still have Dave Martinez, Hispanic manager. You have I'm forgetting my managers off the top of my head. Luis Rojas, we should know him. You would have had Carlos Beltran before he got taken down.
You would have had what's his name from the Red Sox.
Alex
Cora.
Cora. So it's not just because you don't have a certain race in a certain position does not mean you're not diverse. And also, Lord knows that there is a lot of minority representation in the NFL. Lord knows that. Same with NBA.
Yeah.
That both, you don't need to force something to prove a point when you already have a point.
Yeah. So
that is all I'm going to say on the issue. So
I think
take my comment.
The 6 foot stick we're going to go with. We're not going to go any
closer
or any farther.
The socially distant stick.
Yes.
Yeah. Good Lord. We've been talking for like 45, 50 minutes.
Yeah.
So let's wrap this up.
Yep.
Joe, it's been good condensing the last 3 weeks. Hopefully next week or in 2 weeks. I'm predicting, and this is my prediction, so we can say I'm right or wrong next time we meet, that there is going to be an agreement between the Players Union and MLB to resume play no later than June 3rd.
And so with our luck, the way we cover things, they'll agree upon it like tomorrow morning.
Well, no, that's why I said June 3rd, because if we wait another 2 weeks, our next episode will come out on the 2nd. So, but considering the lack of news, I would agree to this, and I think you would too, Joe. If whenever MLB or NBA or whoever of the Big Four or Big Three, I don't count football in this, they were later. Yeah. Whichever one announces they're going to return to play first, I would be up for a special episode to get out as soon as possible to break everything down.
Yep.
So look forward to that when things come back to normal.
All right.
Until then,
wash your hands, stay safe, And I'll see you next time. Well, I guess I won't see you next time. It's a podcast.
Hear me next time.
Hear you
Hear
next
me.
time. All right. Catch you
Goodbye.
later.